And with us here, D.D. Myers was White House press secretary, of course, for Bill Clinton, and Kevin Madden, who was the press secretary for the 2008 Mitt Romney campaign and remains a supporter of Mitt Romney's, if not part of the organized structure. Well, first to you, Kevin, reaction to the president's announcement?
Well, I think it's hard to really judge definitively the politics of this and how it will play out. I think that's something that's probably that we'll probably learn more about that as the weeks and months go on. Oftentimes, I think in campaigns, particularly, national security, national security politics is driven by events. So this is definitely an event that I think the American people are going to use as they enter into any equations of how they judge the president on leadership. I don't know if it will be enough yet to really alter dramatically some of the perceptions that Americans have about the president. It may help on some of his leadership attributes, but we don't really know yet, and we'll have to watch and see how that plays out over the next few weeks. And I think we're likely to see a campaign and the politics over the next year still driven in large part by economic considerations. But again, national security, if some of the events that are altered because of the decisions made today, it could be different in a couple of months.
Things change so rapidly, right, as we've seen just in the last few days. But there is that 3 a.m. phone call threshold question, which was one of the questions in the early South Carolina debate in the last political cycle, that Hillary Clinton really stepped up to that and at least showed that she could meet that test. There were other political problems along the way, but that was a threshold that she, as a woman candidate, Dee Dee, really had to meet.
Right, and I think she projected strength, and I think people who voted on the basis of national security concerns alone, a lot of them voted for Hillary Clinton, but it wasn't necessary. And I think Kevin's right that this is so far an election cycle driven by domestic policy concerns, economic concerns particularly, but there will be intermittent focuses on foreign policy and our role in the world as events, pretty much event-driven, as today's, I think, and yesterday's events remind us that you never know what's going to happen that's going to inject foreign policy into the campaign. I think that's all to Barack Obama's advantage.
But there's also a question here about the way Republicans responded, and Mitt Romney, some said, was grudging in his, oh yes, he deserves some credit for Gaddafi. Why were the Republicans so reluctant to say, job well done, Mr. President?
Well, I think it came as welcome news.
It worked.
Yeah, I think it came as welcome news, and I think that there are some differences of opinion about where the total credit lies, and that's something that, and I think Rachel,
but to go out of your way and credit France and Great Britain. I'm not talking about Mitt Romney now specifically, but so many of the Republicans, Lindsey Graham, John McCain, those running for office, those not running for office, were so quick to say, well, it was really the Europeans.
Well, I think some of the some folks believe that the success that was achieved was much more complex than being credited to one person. But I think Rachel Maddow made a good point, and I know it's odd for a Republican to say that, but I think that there will be a very robust debate about the different worldviews from national security and foreign policy between the Republicans and the Democrats. As much as we've seen some success here, I think there will still be a debate about America's role in the world. And I think Republicans and Democrats, the reason that you may see different opinions and different reactions is because they still have very calcified differences on the outlook and the worldview that we ought to have as from a foreign policy standpoint and our role in it.
And I think the whole Libya engagement is an example of that. The president made a controversial decision to do it collectively, to do it through NATO, to not necessarily have the Americans lead. And people who didn't like that decision are having trouble giving him credit for the ultimate success.
Now, let me quickly ask you about Marco Rubio. Story in the Washington Post, he's now responded saying that it was more than 50 years ago, it was an oral history from his parents. How much of a problem, Kevin, is this for him to be considered as a serious contender for vice president by any of the nominee, whoever becomes the nominee? He was Florida, Hispanic, Cuban-American, bright, Tea Party support. He was on everybody's short list. Does this take him out of contention because of the alleged resume enhancement where his family really were not, as he has claimed, exiled by the Castro regime, but in fact left during Batista's reign, before Fidel Castro even came into power?
I think the first part of this is that it's very presumptuous to be giving this too much and how it would play out in a vice presidential pick. But I think, secondly, the answer would be no. I don't think it's going to hurt him at all. I think the reason that people are gravitate to Marco Rubio is because he's a very articulate champion of conservative principles. He is a very important he's a very important rising star within the Republican Party, and that some of the details or the muddled details of his past, I think he said he's been very clear about the oranges of his parents' reasons for coming to the United States, and it's a really important aspirational story. So I don't think it's going to affect him at all. And I say that as a son of immigrants. who always gets it wrong with my parents when they came here. And
I actually agree with
my grandparents are still trying to get all the stories straight in the family. Thank you so much.
Great to be with you always.
Great to see you. Dee Dee Myers, as always.